Hello. So in this section, we're going to talk about moderation analysis in detail. As we had said earlier about moderation analysis, we said it is about the question of how universal is the causal effect. Just imagine you have a finding based on sample from all age groups, and you want to see whether this finding will be different for people from different age groups. For example, whether they are elderly people versus young people, right? So you want to see whether this relationship will change for people from different age groups. And to measure moderation analysis, this is actually to measure the causal relationship between X and Y when we give different values of moderator. And moderating effect can be indicated by the interaction of X and M. M is the moderator when they explain Y. Here's the formula here. We use the coefficient of the interaction item XM, the C, to indicate the interacting effect, or we call it moderating effect. And for the coefficient of X or M, the A and B, we call it simple effect or mean effect. In general, moderators can strengthen or can weaken or even reverse the relationship between X and Y. Here is an example of moderation. So we have the independent variable task importance. We have the dependent variable task anxiety. So naturally, we will think that the more important a task is, the more anxiety you will have for the task, right? However, we have a moderator here, which is the academic self-efficacy. It is the confidence in doing well in your coursework. So assume that we have a positive relationship between the task importance and task anxiety. And for people with different self-efficacy or academic self-efficacy, the strength of this relationship might change, right? For students with lower self-efficacy, maybe this relationship will be stronger. And for students with higher self-efficacy means they have more confidence in doing well in the test, they might experience a lower level of this relationship. So this is moderation. And from this graph here, normally we will see 3 lines to indicate different levels of the moderator, right? And when you see these 3 lines kiss each other at some point, for example, at here, you will see that this moderation effect is significant. And how to do moderation analysis? So this is quite simple compared to mediation analysis. Basically, there are 2 steps. The first step you need to do is to do the mean centering. Is to do the mean centering of your variable when they are continuous. So why we need to do mean centering? Mean centering will reduce the collinearity in your regression. So this is a very important step when you do the moderation analysis. And the second step is to do the regression and estimate interaction item. Basically, there are 2 approaches that you can use in SPSS. So the first step is you can create an interaction item first, and then you run the regression. The second approach is you can directly use the process macro in SPSS, and you don't need to do anything else. Just use this macro. For the first approach, step 1 is you need to do the mean centering, right? So to do the mean centering, the first step is you need to calculate the mean value of each variable. So you can run the descriptive statistics in SPSS, and then you get the mean value of the variable, and then you write it down, and then you can construct a new variable using this formula. So use the difference value between the original variable minus the mean value. For example, here, we want to construct a new variable, the mean-centered sleep, right? So we can create this new variable using the original value of sleep minus the mean value to construct a mean-centered sleeping hours. After we have done this mean centering, so you need to do this mean centering for your IV if they are for your IV and moderator. So if they are continuous, you need to mean center both. And the second step is you need to create an interaction term. So what you need to do is also to use the compute variable function, and then you create a new variable by using this formula. So we need to multiply the IV and your moderator, right? So you need to select the mean-centered IV and mean-centered mean-centered moderator to construct this interaction item. And the last step you need to do is to run this regression by add your mean-centered IV, mean-centered moderator, and this interaction item. So the result shows that the coefficient of this interaction item is 0.175, and it is significant, right? So based on this result, you can write the conclusion. So the result shows that the interacting effect, or you can say it is moderating effect, of the consumption of coffee and sleeping hours is significant. And then you write down the coefficient, the standard error, and the p-value. So what does it mean? It means that it demonstrates the consumption of coffee can positively moderate, because it is a positive number, right? It can positively moderate the relationship between sleeping hours and students' attention to the class. The second approach of doing moderation analysis is using the process macro. So after you click this option process here, you can see this new window, and what you need to do is to specify the model number. You need to go through the PDF file I sent to you. It has different types of models, and you need to find this simple moderation model. The model number is number 1, and then you need to select your DV, your IV, and also your moderator. And after you have done this, you need to go to the options here, and then you click this generate code for visualizing interactions. This will help you have the code to visualize the moderation. And a very important step is to select this mean center for construction of products. So we only need to select this one, only continuous variables that define products. And then you'll have this result. At the bottom line, you can see there is the interaction item, right? So you can see the coefficient here and the p-value here, and also the confidence intervals. So this is pretty much, the result is pretty much the same as we run by using the multiple regression, right? So based on this result, you can write down the conclusion. So you can even include the confidence interval when you report this result. And the next section about this result is you can see this conditional effects of the focal predictor. So basically, it gives you 3 lines, right? So in the middle, we can see this line, the coffee, which is very close to 0. So because we have done the mean centering, right? After you have done the mean centering, it means that the mean value of this variable will be 0. And we also have 2 other lines, the negative line, also the positive line. So these two lines are one SD away from the mean value. So to indicate a lower level of this variable and a higher level of this variable. So by using these three lines, it shows us the lower level, the average level, and the higher level of this moderator. And you can see at different levels, the effect is different, and also they are significant. So based on this part of results, we can say that the interacting effect of consumption of coffee and sleeping hours significant, right? And we can see that the consumption of coffee, the more you consume coffee, the effect will be stronger. So this is a positive moderation model. And you will also have this code for generating the visualization of moderation. What you need to do is you copy this code and then you type in the syntax of SPSS, and then you will have this visualization, you will have this graph. And so in general, there will be three lines. The green line will be the higher level of coffee consumption. And the red line is the average level. And the blue line is the lower level. So you can see they cross each other at some point. And so this indicates that this is a significant moderating effect of coffee on the relationship between sleeping hours and the attention you pay to a class. So in this example, we show you that the IV, the moderator are both continuous, right? But in other scenarios, sometimes we might have like categorical moderator and also categorical IV. Here is an example. So the IV is policy type. You want to see, so we assume that the policy type, whether it's command and control policy versus market-based policy, will affect the policy effectiveness. And based on this fact, we have this moderator, the sector of implementation. So we want to see whether, when this policy will be implemented in public sector versus private sector, whether this relationship will be different, right? So the IV is policy type is a binary variable, whether it's command and control policy or it is a market-based policy. And also the moderator is categorical, whether it's public sector or private sector. So in this case, to analyze such model, what we need to do is to specify the variable, the type of variable. When you run the process macro in SPSS, you need to go to this multi-categorical, and then you specify the coding system. Another scenario is you have a categorical moderator and also a continuous independent variable. For example, we know there is a relationship between the amount of exercise and the weight loss, right? So the more you exercise, the more weight you can lose. And we want to see whether the type of diet, low carb versus high carb, will make a difference in this relationship. And the IV is the amount of exercise. We can measure it in a continuous way. And the moderator is actually a binary or a categorical variable. And so you can see such cases in the real studies. And this is pretty much the same as the continuous variable and IV. What you need to do is also to specify the variable type before you run the analysis. And other scenario is you have continuous moderator and categorical IV. So the IV will be participation in a structured exercise, whether yes or no, whether you participate or not. And the DV is the weight loss. So we assume that if you participate in a structured exercise program, you will have more weight loss compared you do not do this, right? And the moderators the duration of the program. The duration of program, it can be measured in a continuous way, and we assume that the longer of this program, the stronger this relationship will be, right? So these are the different scenarios where you have different types of variables for your moderator and for your independent variable. So the logic of analyzing the moderation effect is pretty the same. So the most important steps is you do the mean centering if the variables are continuous, and then you specify the variable types before you do the analysis. There are also more complicated cases. You can see here below, and on the right hand, you can see it has a mediator and a moderator. And the left hand, it has two mediators. So when you read papers, empirical papers about the scholars that use this mediation or moderation, normally they will have a more complicated cases, such like the two models. So when you want to analyze more variables in your data set, like you have more complicated models, you can go through the PDF file for the model templates and find the model that you want to test. And then you will input this model number in your process macro, and then you can analyze. Another ways to do this is you can use R, or you can use AMOS or M+. So by using this software, it gives you more flexibility to specify the model. So you can customize the different part of your model. So it's more flexible compared to the macro process in SPSS.